Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
When I think about respect, I don't think about titles, wealth, or power. I think about humanity. Respect is not about who deserves it the most. Respect is about choosing to see another person's dignity. Even when it's hard, even when we disagree, even when life makes us feel small. Respect is the bridge that allows us to connect deeply, and it's the foundation that keeps relationships healthy. So many of us are taught from a young age that respect is something we owe to other people. Parents, teachers, bosses, authority figures. And while that's true, there's a deeper truth that often gets overlooked. We cannot truly give respect to others until we've learned to give it to ourselves. Respect begins at home, inside our own hearts, with the way we treat our own mind, our own body, our own soul. Self-respect is not arrogance. It's not about thinking you're better than anyone else or demanding constant praise. It's about holding yourself with dignity. It's about saying, I am enough. I am worthy of kindness, worthy of standing tall, worthy of not being walked over. And that's something so many of us struggle to believe. Think about how often you've allowed yourself to stay quiet when you wanted to speak. Or the times you laughed off a comment that hurt because you didn't want to be seen as too sensitive. Or those moments when you kept giving and giving to someone who didn't give you the same in return. Those aren't just little choices, they're reflections of how we value ourselves. When we shrink, when we silence ourselves, when we betray our own boundaries, what we're really doing is disrespecting ourselves. And here's the hard truth: the world learns how to treat us based on what we tolerate. I once heard someone say, "You teach people how to treat you by the way you treat yourself." And it stuck with me. Because if we want respect from others, we can't wait around for it. We have to model it. We have to show people, by our actions, by our choices, by our voice, that we are not disposable, that our feelings matter, that our presence matters. But here's the paradox: respecting yourself doesn't always feel easy or glamorous. Sometimes it looks like walking away from a relationship that no longer honors your worth, even when you're terrified of being alone. Sometimes it looks like speaking up at work when your ideas are dismissed, even though your hands are shaking and your voice trembles. Sometimes it looks like saying, "No, I can't do this right now," instead of stretching yourself so thin that you disappear. Self-respect requires courage, and courage often comes wrapped in discomfort. Because when you respect yourself, you will inevitably disappoint people who benefited from your silence, your compliance, your willingness to put their needs before your own. But let me tell you this: disappointing someone else will never be as damaging as abandoning yourself. When I talk about self-respect, I don't mean perfection. I mean compassion. I mean honoring the fact that you are a human being, not a machine. You deserve rest. You deserve forgiveness. You deserve to take up space without apologizing for existing. You deserve to speak without minimizing your voice. Respecting yourself is not about being flawless. It's about being kind enough to yourself to stop tearing yourself apart. And isn't it interesting? The people we respect the most are not the ones who chase approval or bend over backwards to be liked. They're the ones who walk into a room with quiet confidence, who know who they are, who don't need to make others small in order to feel big. We admire them not because they have more, but because they stand tall in their own truth. And that's exactly what self-respect does. It anchors you. But let me get vulnerable here. For years, I confused self-respect with people-pleasing. I thought if I could just keep everyone happy, they'd respect me. If I worked harder, smiled more, stayed agreeable, maybe then I'd earn their admiration. But what I found was the opposite. The more I bent, the less people valued me. The more I gave without boundaries, the more invisible I became. And it broke me down, piece by piece, until one day I realized the respect I was searching for had to come from me first. So I started small. I started by saying no to little things I didn't want to do. I started by being honest when something hurt. I started by giving myself permission to rest without guilt. And though it felt uncomfortable at first, something powerful happened. People began treating me differently. They listened when I spoke. They valued my time. They didn't push as hard against my boundaries. It wasn't because they suddenly changed. It was because I had. Respect is contagious. When you respect yourself, you set a standard. You say, this is how I treat me. This is how I expect to be treated. And those who can't meet that standard either fall away or rise up to meet you. And as painful as it can be to lose people along the way, it's far more painful to lose yourself. Here's the most beautiful part: when you begin to respect yourself, you also begin to see others differently. You stop needing to put them down in order to feel lifted. You stop competing for worth because you already know you have it. You begin to extend compassion instead of judgment because you know what it's like to wrestle with your own imperfections. In other words, the more respect you give to yourself, the more capable you are of giving it to others. So if you're waiting for someone to show up and finally give you the respect you've been craving, let me say this gently: start with you. Start by treating yourself as someone who matters. Start by honoring your voice, your needs, your dreams. Stop apologizing for being here. Stop diminishing yourself to fit into rooms that can't hold your greatness. Stand up, even if your knees are shaking. Speak up, even if your voice cracks. Walk away, even if your heart is breaking. Because every single time you choose yourself, you're building the foundation of respect that no one can take away from you. And when you live from that place, something shifts. People notice. They respond differently. You'll find that respect begins to flow toward you, not because you demanded it, not because you begged for it, but because you embodied it. And that is the deepest, truest form of respect there is. We live in a world where disagreements feel dangerous, where the moment we don't share the same opinion, it feels like we have to choose sides, draw lines, and armor up. Somewhere along the way, we've confused respect with agreement. But they're not the same thing. You don't have to agree with someone to treat them with dignity. You don't have to nod along to someone's perspective to say, I hear you, I see you, you matter. Respect is not about uniformity. It's about humanity. And one of the most powerful lessons we can learn is that honoring someone's worth does not require us to adopt their worldview. Think about it. If respect was only given to those who think, act, and believe exactly like us, then the world would become unbearably small. We'd only live in echo chambers. We'd only surround ourselves with reflections of ourselves. And what happens then? Growth dies, compassion dies, understanding dies. Giving respect doesn't mean you hand over your voice or silence your convictions. It means you listen with openness, not defensiveness. It means you stay grounded in your values while still holding space for someone else's. It's being willing to sit across from someone who lives, votes, worships, or loves differently than you and say, even if I don't agree, you are still human. You still deserve to be treated with kindness. But here's the hard part. It's not natural. Our brains are wired for certainty. We like being right. We crave belonging, and one of the easiest ways to feel like we belong is by pushing away those who are different. Disagreement often feels like a threat, so we either attack or withdraw. Respect asks us to do something braver. It asks us to stay present. I'll never forget a conversation I had years ago with someone whose beliefs were the complete opposite of mine. Every part of me wanted to shut down. My heart was racing, my fists were clenched, and I was so ready to argue. But then something inside me softened. Instead of fighting, I chose to listen. I didn't agree with them. Not at all. But I realized something. If I stopped listening, I stopped seeing them. And when we stopped seeing people, we start stripping away their humanity. That was not who I wanted to be. Listening to someone you disagree with doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong enough to hold space for complexity. It makes you mature enough to understand that two things can be true at once. You can disagree with someone's choices and still respect their dignity. And here's what's interesting: when people feel respected, even in disagreement, they're more likely to respect you back. Think about the times you've been in an argument where the other person didn't dismiss you, didn't roll their eyes, didn't belittle your perspective. Even if you walked away still disagreeing, didn't you feel safer? Didn't you feel seen? That's the power of respect. It de-escalates conflict. It opens doors instead of slamming them shut. But respecting someone doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior. Let's be clear, respect is not about tolerating abuse, disrespect, or cruelty. You can respect someone's humanity while holding them accountable. You can say, I will not let you talk to me like that. Or, I don't accept this behavior, and still not strip them of their worth. Boundaries and respect go hand in hand. Respect without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Boundaries without respect become cruelty. Both are needed for true connection. When we model respect in disagreement, we invite others to do the same. Imagine what our families, our communities, even our workplaces could look like if disagreement didn't automatically mean disrespect. Imagine if children grew up watching adults disagree passionately but still treat each other with kindness. Imagine how much stronger our relationships would be if we stopped making agreement the condition for love. Let me ask you this. Think about someone in your life right now that you disagree with. Maybe it's a parent whose values clash with yours. Maybe it's a coworker whose vision constantly opposes your ideas. Maybe it's a friend who made a choice you would never make. What if, instead of cutting them down or cutting them off, you simply said, I don't see it the way you do, but I still respect you? What would shift in that relationship? What would shift in you? It takes courage to do this. Because it's so much easier to label people, to put them into boxes good or bad, right or wrong, ally or enemy. But respect doesn't thrive in boxes. It thrives in gray areas, in the messy middle where we acknowledge that human beings are complicated. And sometimes, showing respect in disagreement is not about words. It's about presence. It's about choosing not to roll your eyes. It's about not mocking someone behind their back. It's about resisting the temptation to reduce them to a single opinion. Because when we reduce people, we strip them of their wholeness. And true respect means seeing the whole person, not just the parts we approve of. I want to be honest, it's exhausting to always be the one who chooses respect when the world feels so divided. But let me tell you why it's worth it. Because respect is not just about them, it's about you. When you choose respect in disagreement, you're not only honoring the other person, you're honoring yourself. You're saying, I will not let anger define me. I will not let bitterness become my language. I will not lose my humanity in the process of defending my beliefs. And here's the paradox. When we let go of the need for agreement, our chances of genuine influence actually increase. People don't listen to those who belittle them. They don't open their hearts to those who treat them with contempt. But when someone feels respected, even in opposition, they are more likely to lean in. Respect doesn't silence your voice, it amplifies it. So, no, giving respect doesn't mean agreeing with everyone. It doesn't mean betraying yourself. It doesn't mean you have to compromise your truth. It simply means you recognize that other people are human beings, just like you, navigating the same messy, complicated world, doing the best they can with what they have. And maybe that's what the world needs most right now. Not more agreement, but more respect. Not more echo chambers, but more bridges. Not more shouting, but more listening. Because at the end of the day, respect isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about choosing to stay human, even when it's hard. And when we can do that, when we can disagree without dehumanizing, we not only honor others, we honor the very best parts of ourselves. Respect is like a mirror. Whatever you put into it, you're going to see reflected back at you. If you give out kindness, people will begin to show kindness in return. If you extend dignity, people will start offering dignity back. But if you hand out contempt, mockery, or disregard, don't be surprised when those same things come back your way. Life has this way of echoing what we put into it, and respect is one of the clearest examples of that. When I think about the people who carry respect wherever they go, they're not always the richest, the loudest, or the most powerful. They're the ones who make others feel valued. They don't demand respect, they embody it. They move through the world with a kind of quiet authority that says, I honor myself and I honor you. And people respond, they can't help but. Because deep down, we all crave that recognition of our worth. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Mirrors don't lie. If we're constantly surrounded by disrespect, it's worth asking ourselves, what energy am I reflecting? Am I modeling the very respect I want to receive? Or am I contributing to the cycle of disregard? I remember a season in my life when I was always frustrated. I felt like people weren't listening to me. At work, my voice seemed overlooked. In my relationships, I felt dismissed. And I kept thinking, Why doesn't anyone respect me? But then, in one of those quiet, uncomfortable moments of self-reflection, I realized something painful. I wasn't respecting myself, and I wasn't really respecting others either. I was quick to judge, quick to interrupt, quick to minimize my own needs, and then resent people for not noticing. What I saw in others was actually a reflection of what I was giving out. That realization shifted everything. Because once I started showing up differently, once I began listening more, offering kindness without expecting it first, setting boundaries without anger, I noticed the world around me shifting too. People began treating me differently, not because they had suddenly changed, but because I had. The mirror had changed. Respect at its core is relational. It's not something you hoard for yourself. It's something that lives and breathes in the space between people. When you look at someone with dignity, you awaken their dignity. When you treat someone with worth, you remind them of their worth. Respect pulls something good out of people, just like disrespect pulls out the worst. Think about the last time someone truly respected you. Maybe they remembered your name when they didn't have to. Maybe they listened to you without interrupting. Maybe they acknowledged your effort when no one else did. Didn't it make you want to rise to the occasion? Didn't it inspire you to respect them back? That's the mirror at work. On the other hand, think about the last time you felt disrespected. Dismissed in a meeting, ignored in a conversation, judged before you even opened your mouth. What did it make you want to do? Probably withdraw, shut down, or maybe even throw disrespect right back. That's also the mirror. We reflect what we're given. This is why respect is not just a nicety, it's a responsibility. We set the tone. We have the power to influence what gets reflected in our homes, in our workplaces, in our communities. If we model contempt, we breed contempt. If we model compassion, we create compassion. And it starts in the smallest of moments, looking someone in the eye, saying thank you, listening when it would be easier to talk. One of the hardest parts about respect as a mirror is this: it calls us to take ownership. It's easy to point fingers and say, they don't respect me. It's much harder to ask, am I showing respect first? That question requires humility. It requires courage. Because sometimes the answer is no. And when the answer is no, it means we have work to do. But here's the beauty. When we take that step, when we decide to model the respect we wish to receive, we start to shift the culture around us. Families change when one person decides to bring respect into the room. Workplaces change when one person chooses to treat everyone from the CEO to the janitor with equal dignity. Friendships change when one person stops gossiping and starts honoring the absent. Respect ripples outward and the mirror grows bigger. I'll tell you something vulnerable. There was a time I thought respect had to be earned first, that I didn't owe it to anyone until they proved themselves. But living that way only made my world colder. Because here's the thing, if you wait for people to deserve respect before you give it, you'll always find a reason to withhold it. Respect given freely, on the other hand, has this strange power to invite people into becoming the best version of themselves. It's like the mirror doesn't just reflect, it heals. But don't mistake this for being a doormat. Respect doesn't mean letting people trample over you. Boundaries are respect too. Saying no is respect. Walking away from toxic patterns is respect. Not tolerating abuse or cruelty is respect. And the mirror works there as well. When you respect yourself enough to stand firm, you teach others how to treat you. You reflect your worth back into the world, and eventually, the world reflects it back to you. Every single one of us wants to feel valued. We want to walk into a room and know we matter. We want to speak and know our voice is heard. But we can't expect to find that if we're unwilling to give it. Life is too interconnected for that. We're all mirrors. And the question is, what are you reflecting? So maybe today is the day to take inventory. What do your words reflect? What do your actions reflect? What does your silence reflect? Because people are watching and they're reflecting it back to you. And the good news is, if you don't like what you're seeing, you have the power to change the reflection. When we begin to live as mirrors of respect, something extraordinary happens. Conversations soften, conflicts lessen, relationships deepen, and we find ourselves surrounded not by perfection, but by people who feel safe to show up as they are. because they know they will be respected. At the end of the day, respect is not a trick to get people to like you. It's not a strategy to manipulate others. It's a way of being. It's a declaration: I see you and I see myself, and both of us matter. When we live that way, the mirror doesn't just show respect, it multiplies it. And that, I believe, is how we change the world. Not by demanding respect, but by giving it. Not by waiting for the reflection, but by becoming the reflection. Because respect is always a mirror, and the world will always give us back what we choose to give first. So often, when we hear the word boundaries, we imagine walls. We think of fences that keep people out, barriers that create distance, or rules that make us less available, less loving, less generous. And because of that, many of us feel guilty for having boundaries at all. We worry that if we say no, if we speak up, if we set limits, we're somehow being selfish or unkind. But here's what I've learned the hard way: boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They don't lock people out, they teach people how to enter. Boundaries are not a lack of respect, they are one of the deepest forms of it. When you create a boundary, what you're really saying is, I respect myself enough to honor my limits, and I respect you enough to be honest about what I can and cannot give. That's courage. That's integrity. And yet, boundaries are so hard for many of us because they expose our deepest fear that if we stop over-giving, over-extending, or over-pleasing, people will walk away. We think love and respect can only be earned by saying yes to everything. But that's not respect. It's exhaustion. For years, I struggled with this. I thought being kind meant being available all the time. I thought being respectful meant agreeing to whatever was asked of me. So I said yes when I wanted to say no. I stayed quiet when I wanted to speak up. I let people lean on me until I was crushed under the weight of their needs. And in those moments, I didn't feel respected. I felt invisible. But I kept telling myself, this is what it means to be good. It wasn't until I burned out, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that I realized something crucial: you can't have respect without boundaries. Because when you abandon yourself to please others, you're teaching them that you don't matter. And if you don't matter to yourself, how can you expect to matter to them? Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about protecting your own well-being and honoring your own dignity. They sound like, I can't talk right now, but I'd love to connect tomorrow. They sound like, I care about you, but I can't continue this conversation if it turns disrespectful. They sound like, I'm not available to take this on, but thank you for thinking of me. Those aren't rejections, they're honesty, and honesty is one of the most respectful gifts you can offer another person. One of the lies we believe is that boundaries will push people away. But the truth is, boundaries are what allow relationships to last. Without them, resentment builds. We start saying yes with our mouths, but no with our hearts. We start feeling drained, used, and undervalued. And little by little, our connections erode. But when we're honest about our limits, people know where they stand with us. Trust grows. Respect deepens. Relationships thrive not because we give endlessly, but because we give authentically. Think of it this way: boundaries are like the banks of a river. Without them, water floods everywhere, causing damage and chaos. With them, the river flows with direction and purpose. Our lives are the same. Without boundaries, our energy spills out in 100 directions until we're depleted. With boundaries, we can focus our energy where it truly matters, on the people and purposes that align with our values. But here's the vulnerable truth: setting boundaries can be terrifying. Because the moment you draw a line, you risk being misunderstood. You risk disappointing people. You risk losing relationships that only existed because you were willing to abandon yourself. And that loss hurts. But I want you to hear this. The people who truly respect and love you will not be driven away by your boundaries. They may need time to adjust, but ultimately, they will lean in closer. Because healthy people understand that boundaries are not rejection, they are clarity, and clarity is love. I've seen this in my own life. When I began practicing boundaries, some people did fall away. The ones who thrived on my constant availability didn't like the change. But the relationships that mattered most grew stronger. My closest friends told me, "Thank you for being clear. Thank you for being honest. I trust you more now." because I know you're not saying yes out of guilt. You're saying yes because you mean it. That was a revelation. Boundaries didn't kill my relationships. They saved them. And maybe that's the point. Boundaries don't just protect us from others. They protect others from our hidden resentment. They allow us to give freely instead of grudgingly. They create space for real respect to exist. Because what is respect if not the recognition of each other's humanity? And part of being human is having limits. Here's what I know for sure: when you set a boundary, you may feel guilty at first, but guilt is not the same as wrongness. Guilt often shows up simply because you're breaking an old pattern of self-abandonment, and breaking patterns always feels uncomfortable. But with time, that discomfort turns into peace. Because deep down, your soul knows you're finally living in alignment with your truth. Respecting others doesn't mean giving them unlimited access to you. Respecting yourself doesn't mean shutting the world out. True respect is found in the balance, where you can say yes wholeheartedly and no with courage. Where you can show up with openness while still honoring your own edges. Where you can love without losing yourself. So if you've been afraid to set a boundary because you don't want to seem harsh, let me remind you of this. Boundaries are not harsh, they are holy. They are sacred lines that say, "This is how I care for myself, so that I can continue to care for you." And when we live with that kind of integrity, we don't just demand respect, we create it. At the end of the day, boundaries are one of the most profound ways to practice love. Love for ourselves because we honor our limits. Love for others because we give them clarity. And love for our relationships because we protect them from the erosion of resentment. Respect is not possible without boundaries, and boundaries are not possible without respect. They are two sides of the same coin, and when we embrace both, we discover that saying no does not diminish us. It allows our yes to mean more than it ever has before. When we talk about respect, we often think about the here and now, how we treat people today, how they treat us back, how it affects our immediate relationships. But respect isn't just a moment-to-moment choice. It's a seed that grows far beyond our lifetimes. It's the legacy we leave behind. Every act of respect, every decision to honor someone's humanity, is a contribution to the story we leave in the world. And the beautiful truth is that this kind of legacy is more enduring than money, more lasting than accolades, more meaningful than fame. Think about the people you truly admire. Not celebrities or public figures, but real human beings who made an impact in your life. I bet their legacy is wrapped up in the way they treated others. The teachers who looked you in the eye and believed in you. The parents who never dismissed your feelings, even when they didn't have the answers. The friends who listened when the world didn't. Their legacy isn't in the material things they owned. It's in the respect they showed, the dignity they offered, the humanity they recognized in you. Respect is a seed because it grows silently, steadily, invisibly. You may not see the impact immediately. You may never hear the words, "Thank you for making me feel seen," or "You made a difference in my life." And yet, those small acts accumulate. They ripple out in ways you cannot measure. The person you treated with patience today may treat someone else with the same patience tomorrow. The child who saw their worth reflected in your eyes may go on to lead with kindness, to mentor, to create a world that is gentler than the one they inherited. Respect multiplies, it echoes through generations. The idea of legacy can feel intimidating. We worry, what will people remember about me? Will I matter? But when you live with respect as your compass, you don't need to chase recognition. Your actions speak louder than your reputation ever could. Respect is the quiet power that shapes lives, molds hearts, and influences futures. And it starts with one choice, one interaction at a time. I remember a mentor in my life who embodied this perfectly. She never sought attention or praise. She didn't need to be the loudest voice in the room. But she respected everyone, janitors, interns, colleagues, strangers on the street. And the world responded in kind. People trusted her. They wanted to follow her. And when she was gone, years later, the stories that circulated about her weren't about her achievements. They were about her generosity, her integrity, her ability to make others feel seen and valued. That is the kind of legacy that matters. That is the power of respect. Respect is also about courage. Because leaving a legacy of respect means choosing honor over convenience, dignity over ego, empathy over judgment. It's not always easy. Sometimes it means standing up when others are tearing someone down. Sometimes it means being patient when the world wants you to be impatient. Sometimes it means choosing compassion when anger would feel easier. And yet, every act of courage plants another seed, another possibility for the future. What's remarkable is that respect doesn't just impact those around you. It transforms you. The more you honor others, the more you understand the human condition. The more you treat people with dignity, the more dignity you recognize in yourself. Legacy isn't just about how others remember you. It's about how you live. And when you live with respect as your guiding principle, you leave behind a world that is a little brighter, a little more compassionate, a little more human. There's a misconception that legacy is something only older people think about, something reserved for the wealthy or the powerful. But the truth is, every one of us is creating a legacy in every moment. Every choice we make, every word we speak, every way we treat another human being is writing a story. And the most important stories, the ones that last, aren't the ones filled with accomplishments or possessions. They are the stories filled with respect, kindness, and the recognition of shared humanity. I want to challenge you to think about your legacy not as something far off in the future, but as something happening right now. Every interaction is an opportunity to plant a seed. The cashier you smile at, the colleague you encourage, the family member you listen to without judgment, the stranger you treat with patience when the world feels impatient. Every act of respect counts. Every act matters. Every act builds a foundation for a future that extends beyond your own life. Respect also has a healing power. The world is messy. People are wounded. We all carry scars, some visible, some invisible. When we approach others with respect, we give them the gift of being acknowledged in their full humanity. And that acknowledgement can ripple outward in ways we cannot predict. It can break cycles of cruelty. It can inspire trust where there was fear. It can foster hope where there was despair. When you plant a seed of respect, you may never see the full bloom. But it is there, and it is real. The legacy of respect is not limited to people we know. It can extend to entire communities. Think of leaders, activists, teachers, caregivers, and mentors who have shaped the world not through power, but through the consistent practice of honoring others. They may not have had wealth or status, but they had integrity, they had courage, and their respect for humanity created ripples that continue to influence lives long after they are gone. So as you go about your life, consider this: what seeds are you planting? Are you leaving behind a world that honors others, that uplifts, that values dignity? Are your words and actions reflecting the respect you wish to see in the world? Because when you live in alignment with respect, you are doing more than living well. You are leaving a legacy that matters. Respect is a gift you give freely, and it is a gift that grows. It is a seed that can transform individuals, families, workplaces, and entire societies. It is the quiet, persistent work that changes the world. And the beauty of it is this: you don't need to wait for permission. You don't need to wait for someone to deserve it. You can plant it today, in every word, every choice, every interaction. And one day, long after you are gone, that seed will have grown into something magnificent, something enduring, something profoundly human. At the end of our lives, people will not remember our possessions. They will not remember our accolades. They will not remember the hours we spent chasing recognition. But they will remember how we made them feel. They will remember that in a world that often overlooked and dismissed, we saw them. We honored them. We respected them. And in that simple, radical act, we left behind a legacy that no wealth, no title, no status could ever match. So, plant your seeds. Give respect freely. Treat others with dignity. Stand tall in your integrity. Live in a way that inspires others to do the same. Because respect is more than a value, it is a legacy. And every act of respect today shapes the world of tomorrow. Respect is not a transaction, it's a way of living. Give it freely, and you'll find it returns to you in ways deeper than you could imagine. Because at the core of respect is this truth: every human being has value. Every soul is worthy of honor, including you, including me.